So, I have a little notepad here for scripting some ideas, right? And I had a notepad. I had some script ideas that I was gonna do besides just the possible future balance updates for the classes that I play. Okay, I had some ideas. Then I watched the Actman video to the game, and I was gonna put up a response to that because there's some points in there I agree with. There's points in there I disagree with. There's been a lot of people that have been shitting on the video saying, oh, this is wrong, and validating the whole thing. I wanted to break down some of those points. So I started working on that script. Then, for that video, I had scripted, I was going to record it, my work schedule got thrown for a loop. I didn't get a chance to record it before the new patch came out. So I said, okay, let's, I need to focus on the new patch first, right? I had an issue for, I had a list for top 7 issues with the game. And I had done this before the patch. Okay, let's see if any of these get fixed. I can revise this. I can do it, you know, after the patch came out. Now I have another script I have to do. This patch came out and screwed things up. Now, why am I putting these two videos together? The more I played this patch since it is dropped, the more I sit here and realize this is the developer's response to the Actman video, isn't it? And in the back of my head, I've just been blaming Actman for this fucking patch. And it's not a fair assessment. It's not an accurate assessment. But I've been sitting here realizing, so let's jump into something, okay? I'm gonna just pump it. Let's start with this. The Actman makes some valid points in the video. The problem with the review is that it's not an accurate review. Because, one, his review philosophy is skewed for the game he is reviewing. And two, he did not experience the endgame content, which is the primary draw of a Diablo game or any ARPG. Now, these two things go hand in hand because the number one thing that it's almost a direct quote is, I'm not an RPG veteran, I'm not an MMO veteran, I am a single player enthusiast. And that, unfortunately, is the problem with the review philosophy. This is an ARPG. This is a Diablo experience. This is in the same boat as Destiny, Borderlands games, Divinity, Diablo, Path of Exile, Baldur's Gate. It's an RPG. The primary objective of the game is not telling a story. Yes, it is trying to tell you a story, but that's how it's moving you along, right? The primary goal of a game, of this game, is for grinding. It's endgame, grinding, getting better gear, getting better levels. That is the design of an RPG. That is not what this game is trying to do. And when you look at, he fondly remembers Diablo 1. I remember Diablo 1 a little different. But then again, I don't play it as much. I played it one time. It's more of a single player experience. It's not, you're not re-grinding in that game constantly. Plays Diablo 2, talks a little bit about Diablo 2. Didn't play Diablo 3. Now that's a problem because this game is designed closer to Diablo 3 than it is around Diablo 2. Now I played Diablo 2, I played Diablo 3, I have extensive hours on both. My philosophy on Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 is that they're two sides to the same coin. Diablo 2 is a Souls-like experience if you're comparing it to an RPG. It's more challenging, it's more story-driven, there's replay value to it, but the replay value is about getting experience, refining your build, overcoming new challenges. The sense of progression in that game isn't strictly beat this. It's overcoming harder and harder challenges as you grind up. It is much more a punishing experience than other RPGs. It is a much more rewarding experience than other RPGs because of your growth as the player. Your character is less getting powerful. Your build is less getting powerful. Your knowledge of the game and your gameplay experience are growing as you're overcoming challenges. It's a Souls-like type experience. Diablo 3 is an Uncharted type RPG. It is about the biggest, gaudiest set pieces and experiences possible. It's not about challenge. It's about bigger, flashier, better. That's Diablo 3. You can blow through Diablo 3's campaign in one night. You can blow through it. And it's all about grinding endgame content, getting your build as refined as possible, getting bigger, better numbers. You're not trying to hit the millions. You're trying to hit the billions, the trillions, the quadrillions. You're trying to get your build as optimized as possible for the most damage, the highest endgame clear. This game is trying to be both. It's trying to balance both. Because the Diablo 2 player base and the Diablo 3 player base hate each other. They're always butting heads because the design philosophy for both games is so radically different, and you see it. If you look at D2 has a skill tree similar to this in you're constantly leveling. How you're leveling your character is you're getting a skill up from 1 to 20, and you're finding gear that gets you over that level to where you're at, 30 ranks to a skill, right? The gear that you're looking for is giving you small bonuses to your build. Whether you're making rune words that are giving you plus to stats, that are giving you special effects, whether you're finding uniques that give you special effects, right? That's what you're doing. Diablo 3 is similar in that you're picking 6 skills. You pick an upgrade to those 6 skills called a rune. You pick 3 passives. And then you go find legendary gear and you just get better and better. You can run pretty much any build that you want to in D3. There is no meta in D3 because there's only one good build for every character. Maybe you can get a niche second build, but generally you can run any 6 skills that you want and you're fine. It doesn't matter. You're not, if you don't want to run a basic skill in Diablo 3, you don't have to on some classes. They don't need it. If you want to run if you want to run 3 ultimate abilities in Diablo 3, you can. I know on Barbarian I did. My Barbarian did. And the gear in that game is designed to be broken. It's designed to be as broken as possible. You get 3 passives. That's what you get. You get 3 passives, and then you're grinding Paragon. And Paragon isn't like this. It isn't this big board right here that you go around. It's real simple. It works very simply. You max out 2 of your 4 categories, and then all of your Paragon points go into the other class, whether it's going into Intelligence or Dexterity. I think those were the 2 skills. It's been a while since I played D3. You just max out those 2 categories. That's all you're doing with your Paragon points. And you're getting stronger off of that. Very simple. Diablo 3 is a game that is designed for casual players. Diablo 4 is a game that is designed for casual players. And this patch just dropped. Did this patch fix any of the top 7 issues that I had? Let me look. Nah. What it did do, though, is it addressed one of the biggest complaints. I know I'm cherry picking this. One of the biggest complaints in the Actman video was the game is too easy. Which didn't make sense because this game is designed for casuals. Casuals are never going to hit level 100. Right? And if you look at the open world, right? You see how it's level 55? If I were to go to Helltide right now, so I'm actually going to do this. Let's go to... Helltide's going to be absurdly hard. You want to know about... I shouldn't have to play the game into endgame to get a difficulty spike. Yeah. You kind of do. That's how D3 was. That's how D2 is. D2 is not hard until you hit Nightmare. Until you hit Hell. Like, that's how it works. The Actman video is just fundamentally wrong. And I wanted to put that video out because I was afraid this would happen. It's going to detract from the gameplay experience that the developers need to fix. There are issues in this game that the developers needed to fix, and it's not going to be fixed. That's 58. That's fucking absurd. And this video just proved that to me. That patch that released proved that to me. Now, I'll stop ranting about Actman for a minute. Because I'm blaming the Actman for this. Because one of the biggest cherry-picked issues on the Actman video was the game is not challenging enough. What did this patch do? Don't say it nerfed everything. That's obvious. That's not the point. What did this patch specifically do? Has to do with endgame content, okay? Here's my list. I had it in order of top 7 issues. One of these issues is at number 3 is repetitive endgame. Alright, repetitive endgame was on this list.
Greetings.
Let's say...
Hello.
Let's say you beat the campaign, which is long and grindy. You cleared Cathedral of Light, you're level 50, you said, okay, I want to do it again. I want to play a different character. So you create an alt. And you'll see, if you saw my opening page, I'm the alt king. I have 10 characters. I have the maximum number of slots. I have... All of them have cleared Cathedral of Light. All of them are level 50 plus. All of them are in Nightmare difficulty. Okay? So let's be clear. After you beat the campaign, what are you doing in this game to grind a character from level 1 to level 50? You are working on your Renown, which they improved that a little bit by comboing characters' maps together, comboing Altars of Lilith, areas discovered, and waypoints. By comboing that all together, it makes the Renown grind easier, okay? You are doing Aspect Dungeon farming and grinding Aspect Dungeons. And you're doing overworld content for Tree of Whispers. Because Tree of Whispers is one of the fastest ways you can level up in World Tiers 1 and 2. Is they give you a better reward. Because what you're doing is, you get an XP reward for completing each of these. When you get your 10, you go to Tree of Whispers, you turn in your content, you get a cache. That gives you a chunk of experience. That gives you gear that helps you level. Okay? So that's the 3 things you're primarily doing. You're doing Renown grinding, Aspect Dungeon grinding, and Tree of Whispers content. Okay? Which is overworld content. That's the 3 things you're doing. The reason why people say the endgame is repetitive, when you hit World Tier 3, what are you doing? You're still doing the Renown grind. You're doing Nightmare Dungeons now, which are basically Aspect Dungeons with a twist. And you're doing Helltide, which is basically overworld content with a twist. So you're doing the exact same content. This is the only things you get from coming to World Tier 2, from 2 to 3. You get Helltides, you get Nightmare Dungeons. Yes, you get better gear. Yes, you get more difficulty. Yes, you get better experience gains, which we'll talk about in a minute. But, what are you primarily doing? You're doing the same content over again. That's why people say the endgame is repetitive. Now, the design philosophy of this game is the reason why this patch is the problem. You can say that it's because they nerfed everything into the ground. I agree with you. It makes the game unfun. But the design philosophy is the problem. People said that the endgame was boring. The developers said, take a break. You're not supposed to hardcore grind this game. But it's an ARPG. That's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. That's exactly... I have not played any other games in my library for the most part since this game dropped. Hold on. I'm going to look at my library. Alright? I can count On one hand, the number of games I have played since Diablo 4 has launched. I've been grinding this game. Deep Rock has a new season. Haven't grinded it. New season in eFootball 23. Haven't grinded it. My old grinding in Diablo 2. Haven't grinded it. Killing Floor 2. Still waiting on them to fix the bugs, but that's a completely separate issue. All of the grinding in other games that I was doing, I stopped because I need to grind this up. I want to grind this up. I have 10 characters. It's a lot of grinding to do, right? They didn't want you to complete the endgame content. And people in endgame content are clearing this shit faster than the developers want. So what did they do? They nerfed survivability, and they nerfed the biggest sources of bonus damage. They nerfed crits and vulnerable, right? They nerfed the biggest ways you get bonus damage. They nerfed the biggest ways that you cleared endgame content. You can't tank endgame content as well anymore, and you can't dish out millions of crit damage and millions in vulnerable damage now in endgame builds. Why is that a problem? They haven't given us endgame content. There's not a secret dungeon around here where it rewards you with something exclusively from beating it. You know what the reward is that you get for beating Uber Lilith at level 100? You get a horse skin. You know what happens when you beat Uber Lilith a second time? You get nothing new. You get the same legendaries, uniques. You get a horse. You get a horse skin. You don't get an Uber unique drop, like a grandfather or a shakeup. You don't get, you know, a modifier to your Paragon board that automatically unlocks a let's say you unlocked a legendary node from another board you don't have equipped. You can equip that on a board, right? You don't get that. The reward in this game, it's an RPG, is you're getting your build better and better and better. That's what you're doing. Now, they've designed this game around seasonal content, and they launched this patch right before the season. We're expecting because they want to see, they're going to use Season 1 as a testing window to accumulate data and see what changes they need to make. Here's the problem, though. I don't care about that. I'm not playing Season. I'm not playing Seasons because I want access to my stash. I want access to my characters that I've been grinding. Now, I'm not someone who's saying that, oh, Seasons are bad. I like grinding a new character. If they gave me 5 new character slots right now, I have at least 3 Druid builds. Another Necromancer build. Another Sorceress build. Rogue, I haven't even played. I have other builds I want to do. This is now a pure Werebear build, because of the unique, I got the unique. I want to make a pure werewolf build, or a Tempest Roar werewolf build, so to speak. At least a werewolf build, right? I want to make a Shadow Blight Necromancer. I want to make a Fire Sorceress. You know? I don't have that. I don't have those options, because I'm full on character slot. I would absolutely grind it out. I love grinding characters from 1 to whenever. But I like having my stash. I like being able to go to the stash, accumulate things for other builds, accumulate aspects for other builds, gems for other builds, and come in and go and make that leveling process easier. What I don't like, that's the only reason I don't play Seasons in D3. I'm not going to play it in D4, and I don't play Ladder in D2. I don't like you start completely from scratch. I like some level of progress. This is why I primarily like roguelikes, because when you die and you start over, you carry some progress with you. That's why I like roguelikes. This is not a roguelike. So that's fine. I play Eternal Realm. I always play the Standard Realm, the Eternal Realm. It's fine. I don't always like some of the gimmicks in that. Here's the issue, though. In D2 and D3, when you play... Ah, shit. I didn't mean to press that. When you play... Like, let's say... I am playing D3, and I get a set. When that character goes from a seasonal character to a normal character, guess what happens to those sets? They come over to the base game. in this game, you're not going to get malignant hearts in this game. You're not going to be able, at the end of the season, you don't walk over to your stash and go, wow, look at all these malignant hearts that I have. Because it's only in the season. So they haven't even made seasons right in this game. Compared to normal. Which is a problem. Now, what do I think of the patch itself? Let's talk about the patch a little bit. Number one, they made experience gains harder. That's a problem. They made it so that it's harder for lower level characters to grind. Now, they also immediately changed the level difficulty and level scaling. Level scaling was a big problem because it keeps you from power leveling. It keeps you feeling weaker. Now, this is a Diablo 2 element that they had, which I didn't have a problem with. Here's the problem that I have with it, okay? So I beat Cathedral of Light on most of my characters below level 50. When you come over to World Tier 2, 3, from 2 to 3, everything immediately jumps to 53. Now they've moved the goalpost. Now it's 55. Helltides were 55. Now they're 58. They made Helltides harder to grind. Helltides are now level 58. Which means my plan was to grind all of my characters up to 53. So I wouldn't be at this major disadvantage. Now I have to grind them up to 55. So I'm not up to a major disadvantage. So the progress that I just made on my other 3 characters, the other 3 characters that I was able to grind up to level 53, I have to regrind them to 55. Before I can start grinding Helltides. Because I can't grind this because it's not fun. It's not fun on a level 50 character. One of the endgame contents that they want you to do is walled off. It's level gated. Because it's 58. And you die. And when you die, you lose half your cinders. So you can't buy anything from the chest. Now. Alright, let's look at the chest, right? Where's a chest on the map? I don't have any chests revealed. Just went to Girondi. There was a chest that was right here. In Girondi. Okay, so there's a chest right here. They increased the cost of the chest. But the rewards in it are shit. Oh, and it's bugged now. The cinders are bugged. That's great. I appreciate that game. So they made Helltides harder. Which is endgame content. They made that harder for you. They buffed the rewards on Tree of Whispers content in World Tier 3 and World Tier 4. Which is nice, I guess. Not enough people were doing this content. Because it's overworld content. Nightmare Dungeons. They made Nightmare Dungeons harder as well. Yay. Alright. Look at what they did. And now the way it works is you can be over-leveled compared to other things in the overworld to make you feel powerful. But they offset that by nerfing all of your defenses. So look at your gear now. Alright? Look at my weapon here. What they did is they nerfed the core stats on a weapon. Okay? So you see how I use willpower. So I've rolled willpower on this. This should be, they nerfed this by 50%. It was 50%, now it's 25%. So they nerfed that so you can't get as much strength, willpower, dexterity, intelligence out of your weapons. You can still get it from your gear, because look at this. This piece of gear right here has a max roll on it of 48, right? Now, you don't get as much willpower out of your gear. So it makes the grind harder. They've nerfed the survivability aspects. They've nerfed things like cooldown reduction, damage reduction, total armor. This used to be one of the best pieces of gear in the game, and they nerfed it by a lot. They nerfed vulnerable damage. They nerfed critical strike damage, right? Now, they gave you more damage in other buckets, in other damage buckets, in individual build-specific buckets, right? But they also nerfed all the legendary aspects that they deemed problematic. They also nerfed all the skills and passive that they deemed problematic. The easiest way I can explain this is off of Bone Spear Necromancer. So Now I'm going to start switching builds around to show you some of the issues. They nerfed Bone Spear. I understand why they did that. It's fine. I was fine with that. Now, I have a problem with this, though. And this is, again, going to show you why the design philosophy for this patch is a problem. This is a Summonmancer. This is a Bone Spear Necromancer. That's the primary design of this, is Bone Spear Necromancer. Okay? By the way, this top 7 issues with Diablo 4, I'm going to make this video as a secondary video. I'm not doing it right now. I just want to mention that. I now need to adjust this. Adjust my script for it. I might need some new things. But I need to get something off my chest, okay? First off, let's start with... This is bugged. This is bugged. You can't spend points into it, okay? So now, I have 4 skill points that I freed up over here. Because I don't... With this bug, I'm not going to leave these points here. Why would I leave these points here? What sense does that make? You want me to leave points in a skill that's bugged, that I can't get value out of? No. I'll go with that. I have to wait for them to fix their game that I paid money for. And the common thing I see from all the content creators is, it's for the future of the game. Nerf Bone Spear. Right? Hold on a sec. Oh no, they didn't fix that. Alright. So they nerfed Bone Spear, but they also nerfed some of the other skills here, right? Where is it? Here we go. This used to be every 10 essence you have upon cast. Now it's 30 essence upon cast. They nerfed some of the legendary aspects for the build, right? They nerfed this one right here, the Bone Spear one. But here's my thing. They nerfed the aspect. They nerfed the passives. They nerfed the skill. And they nerfed crit and vulnerable damage across the board? Why? I don't understand that. That's the thing I don't understand. They didn't just nerf the problem builds. They nerfed all crit and all vulnerable damage across the board. Rather than target farm the builds that were overperforming, which is the key thing. Okay, so Bone is overperforming. Bone Spear is overperforming. Bone Spear is the build that is run by the majority of the community. The second most commonly ran build is Blight. The third most is Blood, which they had already nerfed Blood Lance in the previous patch because they couldn't fix it, so they nerfed it to keep it from being a problem, right? So people were playing that even less. They were playing Bone more. And Skeleton, the summon build is weak because you're giving up 2 of your 6 slots for your minions. You only get 4 slots. Oh my god, this is annoying the shit out of me right now. Anyways. They've nerfed your builds to the ground, right? They nerfed this build in particular down into the ground. And this is the character, I busted my ass to get this character over 300 intelligence. My intelligence is trash now. Like, this roll right here that I had on this site was in the 70s. This was a 70s roll. And now it's 44. This is the character that was already underperforming because it was the first character I beat the campaign with. I wasn't mid-maxing this character how I wanted to. And now, I'm right back down into the trash. I'm right back down into the cellar. Because they nerfed the build. Now, this isn't the only build that they nerfed, alright? That's the thing I want to mention. They nerfed a lot of builds. They didn't buff many builds. You could say, well, they gave you buffs in the last patch. But rather than target cherry pick and target what builds were overperforming and nerf them. They did flat nerfs across the board to slow you down, to make endgame harder. But it also makes the beginning of the game harder. Let's look at this barbarian as an example. And this is the one balance change in this patch that pissed me off the most. Because I genuinely did not care about the balance changes except for one fucking thing that they did to Barbarian. One issue that is on Barbarian that is a problem to me. They've been nerfing Barbarian into the ground. After I show you this, I'm gonna explain, this is gonna be my segue to why the biggest problem with this is not the actual buffs and nerfs that they had in this patch. It's the lack of respect that the developers have for your time and your money in this game. And it's that Diablo Immortal mentality creeping in. I need to spend these skill points real quick. Hold on. Okay. Alright. Let's go to our skill tree. Okay. So, I talked about this in the Barbarian video. The Barbarian's problem is that all of its basic skills have a good usage, right? All of their damage skills have a good usage, right? The problem is in their defensive and utility. The Barbarian is over-reliant on their shouts. Why would I run Iron Skin when I could run a shout? Why would I run Ground Stomp when I run 3 shout? Because look at it. You have to have a basic, you have to have a core, right? So that's 2 of your 6 slots gone. You run 3 shouts, you have 1 spot that's competing for everything else. The ultimates kind of suck. Iron Maelstrom sucks. Wrath of the Berserker sucks outside of 1 build. Call of the Ancients is mediocre at best. Why am I running Steel Grasp except to trigger either Vulnerable, which got nerfed, or Berserking? Why am I running Rupture when Bleed Barbarian sucks and the cooldown's too long? Why am I running Death Blow? It's great, but why am I running it? If it misses and it goes on cooldown, the cooldown's too long. Right? Leap. Great skill. It's not a movement skill. It's more of a damaging skill. Why am I running it? I need legendary aspects for it. If all of my legendary aspects are around whatever my core skill is and my shouts, I have no room to run legendaries for Leap unless I make a build for it. Charge as a movement ability sucks. Why am I running it? Why am I running it, right? This Barbarian that's here, by the way, is specifically a brawling Barbarian. He's a meme build, okay? Now, this Barbarian has something going. I was running Furious Whirlwind because Whirlwind wasn't my primary damage skill. This was a hybrid between Brawling and Bleed. The Bleed skills suck. They don't deal enough damage to be viable. But some of the Bleed effects are good. The old Hamstring was absolutely lovely. And the Bleed passive is good. Whenever you cause an enemy to bleed, you have a chance equal to your critical strike chance, which is great for 2-handed swords, which is great for Whirlwind. What does this Barbarian specialize in? He specializes in 2-handed swords. Look at that. 2-handed swords. So I ran the Bleed build. Increase the bleed amount by 100% of your critical strike damage bonus. Overpowering a bleeding enemy creates an explosion that inflicts 11% bleeding damage over 5 seconds. That got nerfed. That used to be 20%. I don't know if that was in the patch notes or not, but that used to be 20%. Wow. Okay, so they nerfed that. You notice I'm not running that anymore. And then you had Hamstring, where old Hamstring was bleeding enemies were slowed 10, 20, 30%. This meant you could run legendary aspects. Do I still have any on here? That were based around crowd control. Here we go. Restore 2 of your primary resources. This ring's terrible now. I actually need to get rid of this ring. Why? Because I don't crowd control enemies anymore. Because they took away my slow. Shout. Direct damage against bleeding enemies has a 25% chance to stun them for 2 seconds. Hey, guess what? This is trash now. Because I don't slow them anymore. You wanna know why? Because now your bleeding effects only slow healthy enemies, which is 80% of your health or more. And then you might say, well, how are you running a bleed build if you didn't run bleed skills? So, Thorns damage has this effect, tough as nails. Increase your Thorns by 9%. When enemies hit you, they take an additional 10% of your Thorns as bleeding damage over 5 seconds. Meaning, anytime an enemy hits you, they proc Thorns. In addition to this, I can proc it off of Furious Whirlwind using a slashing weapon. Again, two-handed sword build. Whirlwind inflicts 40% of its base damage as bleeding over 5 seconds. And then Battle Lunge. Lunging Strike inflicts 20% bleeding damage over 5 seconds. This is my primary, my core, and my Thorns, which were all generating bleeding. So if I hit an enemy with any of my non-brawling skills, basically, I got bleeding damage procs. Which meant they were slowed by 30%, and it triggered gushing wounds. That's gone now. Because this only affects healthy enemies. Meaning the slow goes away as soon as they drop below 80% of their health. And you might say, well, that's retarded. You're still getting the bleeding effects. Why wouldn't you still run the bleeding passive? Because I'm not getting the bonus slow, so I'm not getting any crowd control damage affixes off of it. Meaning, it's worthless now. It's worthless to run. And this is the problem that you have with Barbarian as a whole, is this build is pretty good. The AFK Thorns Barbarian is really good, especially at level 100, especially in PvP, especially in higher Nightmare dungeons, where enemies hit you and die. You don't do anything. Well, they nerfed that build into the ground. So what are your other options on Barbarian, right? Walking Arsenal is still shit, but you would consider running it because, oh, it gives you 10% increased damage, I guess. You're not getting the bonuses up if you're only using one weapon, but I guess it's 10%. And then there's Unbridled Rage. Oh, well, I mean, your core skills deal more fury, but they cost more fury, which isn't really great for some builds, but... yeah, I'm gonna switch. I guess I'm gonna go back to that, and I'll go back to that. Because I can still at least get some value off of it. Okay, here's your problem, though, with the build. They want you to run Berserking. They keep nerfing shit that's not Berserking Barbarian, and I hate this build. It's not fun to play. I've tried it. I've tried every version I can get of it. It's not fun to play. I don't like it. That's me, personally. And I feel as though every single time I work on Barbarian and I try and improve my build, they come in and they say, no, play Berserking Barbarian. This is the build that's underperforming. Why aren't you playing this? This is what we want. We keep nerfing your other builds. Please play this build. That design philosophy is annoying. Anytime the community is able to trigger out a niche build, they nerf it. They say, no, we don't want you playing that build. That segues me into the design philosophy that I have with the game. Which is their mentality is they want you to play the game a specific way. If you read the patch notes, they are borderline offensive to the player for their time and their money. For the money that they've spent in this game, any money they planned on spending for this game, the money that they aren't spending on other games that they would be playing because they're playing your game and your time. Cooldowns. That's one of the biggest issues that we have in this game, particularly if you're a Sorceress player. You understand, Sorceress is the weakest class in the game right now. Most people agree on this. She's so cooldown based. They said, we noticed that players were mandatory running cooldown reduction affixes in their gear because they felt like the cooldowns in the game were a problem. We don't agree with you on that. We nerfed all cooldown reduction affixes. Stop running them. We want you to have long cooldowns. But we don't want long cooldowns. We're trying to make some builds work. Some builds need cooldown reduction. No, they don't. We designed those cooldowns a very specific way. Instead of reducing the cooldowns on builds, to go along with nerfing the cooldown reduction affixes. Or giving us a new legendary aspect. or a new unique that improves cooldowns. They just nerfed the cooldown reduction aspects. Barbarian is the king of this. They've done nothing to fix the problem that Barbarian has. Barbarian's core gameplay problem is, why would I run anything besides 3 shouts? I run 3 shouts, a spender, a generator, and then that 6th skill is whatever you want at that point. You only get 1 slot in your Barbarian unless you make a meme build like I have, okay? So what have you done for Barbarian to make Barbarians better? You took away their tank power, you took away crit and vulnerable, you've taken away most of their affixes, you've nerfed most of their builds. What did you give them back to replace it? Nothing. Necromancer was broken as hell. You nerfed Bone Spear. Fine with that. What did you give Necromancer that already has the worst survivability in the game? They have 1 defensive ability that doubles as your movement ability. What did they give you as a Necromancer player to reward you for their nerfs? Because they nerfed crit, they nerfed vulnerable. What did they give you back? Druid players got their tank power nerfed. Their tank power got destroyed in this patch. They nerfed vulnerable damage for Storm Druids. They nerfed crit damage for Storm Druids. Like, what did they give you back in this patch? On Druid. What buff did they give you? They didn't give anything as a compensation for the nerfs that they made. They specifically made the game harder for endgame content, which negatively impacts the beginning of the game, which was one of the biggest complaints. They nerfed endgame content so they didn't have to design more endgame content. They nerfed the Eternal Realm in order to better balance the Seasonal Realm. They've showed a lack of respect for the player base that is very unwanted. And all of these changes that they've made, they made it longer to grind, longer to complete the game, harder to complete the game, less reward for endgame grinding. And I just sat there and thought to myself, they made this patch for the Actman, didn't they? Like, they watched that video and said, oh shit, he's a large content creator. He's not a Diablo-specific content creator. We don't care about Diablo content creators. Fuck them. We know they're gonna play regardless. What are they gonna go do? What are the Diablo content creators gonna go do? Go play D2? Or D3? Oh yeah, that's exactly what we can do. There's still D2. There's still D3. You can go play Path of Exile. You can go play Divinity. I need to play this. It's just a very ominous foreshadowing for the future of the game. They say, oh, this patch is about the health of the game. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's about the future of the development. And you see, this video that's gonna, this campfire chat that they're gonna have on the 21st is gonna be very indicative of if they're actually responding to our feedback. Because let's be clear, they didn't address a single issue that we had in this game other than there's now a cap on Sacred and Ancestral gear. So you can use Sacred and Ancestral gear on your alt accounts now. That's the one win that we got out of this patch. The one singular win. Oh, and world bosses drop more potions now. Don't let me forget that. Yay. If the... Almost everybody that I've talked to, that we've gone over the patch notes for this game, has considered leaving the game. Because it's not fun right now to play. And it's not going to get fun unless they revert some of these changes. Not revert some of them by like, give us back our 1 billion crit damage on Bone Spear. But give us power back in other ways. You want to make the game more glass cannon oriented. You want to take out defensive aspects. Increase offensive affixes. I said defensive aspects, I meant affixes, sorry. You want to nerf defensive affixes. But you also nerfed crit and vulnerable affixes. Okay, fine. Fine, I understand that. Give us back power in other ways, right? Give us the ability, give us more of a reward for endgame. Give us more endgame content. Give us better endgame content. Not grindier, harder endgame content. Not, hey, we took away all your power so you die more often, so it feels more rewarding. Like, give us power in other ways. Otherwise, this game will die. Like, this patch is indicative of live services as a whole. Balancing the game for the live service aspect of the game. Fuck you, give me money, designed to the game, is not healthy for the game, and it causes people to leave. Because think of how many games have died within a year recently. Think about how many games I've played that have died within a year. I wanted to get into RE3 to the multiplayer mode, which is the Dead by Daylight clone, dead within a year. I wanted to get into Evil Dead the game, dead within a year. I wanted to get into Predator's Hunting Ground, dead within a year. Aliens Fireteam Elite, dead within a year. Like, there's just this growing fear. Every time we get into a game, dead within a year. And look at how many other live service games have flopped miserably. Anthem. Marvel's Avengers. Fallout 76. You could say, but Fallout 76 made a comeback. No Man's Sky. But it made a comeback. The Division. 1 and 2. Pretty much every Ghost Recon game that's come out. Dead within a year. For Honor. Dead within a year on launch. All of these games that have to make a comeback. Good for you for making a comeback, but you've already chased away your player base. You've already chased away the majority of your player base. You want to know how a game makes a significant comeback? Like, Dead by Daylight was a game that was dead on release, right? It was dead within a year. The player base fell off a cliff. They made improvements to the game. They made big splashy DLCs. They got a shit ton of players back in the game. You know what happened to that game? It died again. They had to go back. They had to get licenses. They had to get big, splashy gameplay changes and DLC changes. Dead within a year. And it keeps happening. Overwatch did the same thing. They kept having to rebalance their game around these big, splashy metas. Dead within a year. And it's indicative of live service games. It's that roller coaster. They can't get any more money. They make a change. It hurts the community. They have to make a big buff to make it back up to the community. Then they end up killing it because they're not making money off of it. That's where D4 is going to go. And this game, I said this game is closer to D3 than it is to D2. But now it's moving closer to Diablo Immortal than it is to D3. And that is a problem. If this game turns into Diablo Immortal, you are not going to have a player base for this game. This game was marketed to hell and back. This is the largest Diablo game ever. This is one of the largest RPGs ever. ARPGs ever. But in terms of sales and concurrent player base right now. And I guarantee you by the end of Season 1, you will have the player base for this game between Season and Eternal Realm. I guarantee you that the player base for this game is going to drop below 70%. If they do not make some serious balance changes and some serious attitude shifts in how they balance this game. If their idea is to please the Diablo 2 people by saying we don't want to make everything broken, we don't want to make everything how high can you get, and they don't want to balance it around the Diablo 3 player base of, you know, trying to make the player feel empowered, right? They don't want to design it around the Diablo 2 player base where there is better gear in endgame. There's better rewards in endgame. You are rewarded for playing hell difficulty. You are rewarded for beating the game multiple times and for grinding the level 100 as much as you can. If they don't want to balance it around either of those aspects, if they want to balance it around, here's a season, grind from level 1 to level 100, or you'll miss out. By the way, you have to spend a shit ton of money in the battle pass because it has to be used in the season. It can't be used in the regular game. So do you want these pay-to-win aspects or not? If they go down that route, you're going to have to go back to Path of Exile and Divinity, I guess.